Imagine you've been in the same company for 10 years. For some, it's like, ooh, scary. For others, it's like, I've been there. And imagine you have a team of 10 people. You know everything, probably, in the company. You know what your team's supposed to deliver. You know if something is not working well, who to talk to. And if the systems have some glitches or just don't go, you know the workarounds. All right? Now also imagine you just heard that your company been purchased by your competitor a few months ago, and now it's public. So what are your first thoughts? What are the worries that come into your head? What are those? Give me some suggestions. What would that be? What are you worried about? Will I keep my job? What else? I'm sorry? What will change? Very good. Restructure, what will it be? Excuse me? Who to talk to? Very good. Excellent. Excellent. So I think as architects, and to those of you who are architects, we should really try to answer the majority of these questions. And we can. The systematic ones, the ones that are really to our core of social existence. Am I staying in the same location, or will I get paid, and will my friends stay at the same place? We can inform, but probably it still will, as again from Maslow, your first motivational levels will still not be able to answer. But those questions that came after that, for sure. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So, my name is Sasha Aganova. I'm a partner at a consulting firm called Process Renewal Group. This company this year is actually celebrating the anniversary of 20 years servicing companies to make changes. And it's different type of changes. We've been all over the world. We support more than 100 projects to help organizations to move their performance. Hence the name of Process Renewal Group. We use process as the actual core for all majority of the conversations, because that's where we see as a backbone that we bring the conversation. And I'll show you why, and I'll show you how. So today, as Guru mentioned, I wanted to talk to you and bring you another story of how two companies joined, and what are the difficulties that we actually faced, and the approach that we took. Before I do that, I wanted to give you some of the stories. Is everything okay? Awesome. I wanted to give you some of the stories because merger is not an easy endeavor, and we had to learn from some other people's mistakes of what actually happened. Now I'll tell you some of the numbers and some of the, I'll go from the most recent but to most expensive mergers and acquisitions failures that there were. And what is interesting when we actually looked into some of the case studies, according to Harvard Business Review, between 70% and 90% of mergers and acquisitions fail. That was as of April 18, 2018. That's what they reported. So my first case study was from Kraft Foods and Heinz. They merged in 2015, and they created it was a US third largest food company at that time, with the annual combined sales over $26 billion. But when they were merging, the focus was on cost cutting. Not really the growth. And it's really resulted in a significant decline in sales. And early in 2019, Kraft Heinz announced a net loss in value of over $15.4 billion, just recent. Another merger that you know very well, probably. I don't know which way to show. There. In 2014, when Microsoft acquired Nokia, very well known, of course, for their significant issues. In that organization, in 2007, when the first iPhone launched, actually I didn't know Nokia had a 50% market share in the mobile phones. But when the first iPhone came out in 2014, it had lost 90% of the share. They had very big cultural differences between two organizations, and Microsoft really failed to capitalize on the acquisition. And it resulted in close to $8 billion in losses. Another interesting example was in 2000. AOL. AOL purchased and announced Time Warner for $160 billion. This number is just like, I don't know how many zeros it is even. And it was, at that time, the world's largest media company. But the combination didn't last long, and they separated entirely very soon. And the CEO, Jerry Levin, at that time, he said, I presided over the worst deal of the century. Last one that I wanted to show, another expensive fail. This very well-known, Daimler-Benz and Chrysler. These two companies with very different propositions. One is very cost-cautious, and the other one, exclusive brand and customer service. In 1998, Benz purchased Chrysler for $36 billion. It was then regarded one of the largest industrial mergers ever. But the potential powerhouse could not go through because the majority, there were multiple issues, the systems, if you look at the case study, and as well as the cultural differences. But Daimler paid $650 million just to get rid of Chrysler at that state. Isn't that interesting? So we didn't want to end up on this list, of course, and the companies I'm going to talk about, I'm 99% sure that each of you tried or have their products at home. Cannot tell you anything more about it. Everything I'm going to show you is going to have a very generic information, but based on these two companies. So what are those questions, right? So the same questions as I asked you before, but that we wanted to answer. So how the work will be done across the new organization? What are all the systems and roles that are going to be impacted? Do we know enough about the business flow to be able to improve the operating model? Will my key talent leave? Will they be frustrated from one perspective, but it's also, is it something that they still want to be a part of? And can we continue delivering products and services uninterrupted during this transition? So we were rewiring a lot of wires while the lights still needed to be on. I wanted to give you slide from Milan's last year's presentation. And I saw these were very, very good quotes that I really liked. Design is the rendering of the intent, and an enterprise is an ambitious endeavor. My business partner developed this view, which called hexagon. And in here, you definitely see why we say it's so ambitious. Why it is an ambitious endeavor? There are so many components. And if you want to get into here, which says business performance right in the middle, in the bullseye, you have strategy piece that you need to take into consideration. Everything that is actually envisioned, the objectives, and so on. You have your policies, your context of where your business actually drives. What is your organizational? What is the structures? What are the roles? What are the incentives? We have those supporting and enabling capabilities in here. You have infrastructure. What are your facilities? Where are your factories? Where are your people? Where can you staff everything? Technology, software, services, application, data access. And you have competency, motivation, people, of course. So many components. So as architects, we facilitate this conversation. We're definitely not a subject matter experts. But I think one of the things that we brought to the table is the patience and willingness to untie everything. And the reason I say why the process is really is backbone, check it out, take a look at this. Business processes right here because it connects. It can tie all of those things together. Nothing else, unless, please, you're very welcome to disagree with me, but please show me something else that ties so well all of those components and can facilitate those conversations around every single component and put it in, in all its nice compartment. Now, what's in the middle, of course, right before there is culture. Because no matter how well you design it, how neat it looks on your pieces of paper, or in the software, anything that you have a discussion, until you're actually bringing into the culture, until it becomes the way we do things around here changes, you're not going to get to your golden performance that you're looking for. So for us, just understanding again what are all of the components was extremely important, and we brought this to the team as we were working through this. Of course, there is no shortage of frameworks. We all have frameworks. We also have our framework that we work with for 20 years, and then, well, didn't look like this in the beginning. But I think what it's really why process renewal group's approach is unique, and which is actually very similar to ADA's. They have a lot of similarities because we worked together as well. We have multiple components that start with understanding the content. Where do we belong? Where does this company actually exist? What are all of the ecosystem? And what is the business model of it? Even though if you're changing or not, but you have to understand where you're driving the information from. What are the strategic objectives? You have to understand before you start designing it. And what are the strategic requirements? That's the content. And this, I think, this is the starting point for any meaningful work. That's where we're driving the intent for a lot of the designs. In this project, our scope was here, design the business. And that's that hexagon, all of the components that there were, to understand them, to align them, to understand if they're actually needed, are they changing, and continuously then rolling it out into building the business. So that's where we worked with project management team, implementation teams, and made sure that the integrity of the design that was created was carried through. And this is your ongoing operations. You can do agile, you can do waterfall. We really did not care. We were given a short period of time. We needed to keep the operations ongoing, but we had our live dates to go into so we can implement bits and pieces so we can go into every single day's operation. Now, I cannot take, just jumping in front a little bit, it was a successful project. The company still exists, it's prospering, it's doing very, very well. We were a team of a few people that helped with a business design perspective, but we worked with a lot of other companies as well at the same time, with the change agents. We had IT organization, very strong group of people that were supporting us to understand what are the requirements and taking it over and through to implementation. Working with a very strong consulting firm on a strategic perspective, we needed to understand what are the actual desires, what is the vision, because then we needed to take this information and feed the design through. We had very strong change management people. I cannot underline how awesome and how important it is to have a good change management people on your team, or at least working with you. Because communication and addressing those questions, the social even questions of, will I stay, am I safe at a period of time or multiple times throughout the project was extremely important. So change management folks who informed us and asked the information again was also feeding the rest of the team and the rest of the participants. So, working consortium. Just 4 points about two organizations and what we had to go through. So, they're both market leaders, as I said, very well known. They're both market leaders in their respective products. Geography, you had 2 different locations. Thank God it was one continent and the same language. That helped, definitely. It was a mixed ownership. One is publicly owned, another one is private. And the customer base was actually similar. That was a little bit easier, right? So it is similar customer profile that we had to deal with. Now, our project objectives. Number 1, we had to design processes that would, of course, will fulfill requirements of all markets and all products. Number 2, we needed to identify what system changes we need to be made. 3, what would be the role changes that we need to complete. 4, change agents, so we're ensuring that all of the agents are aligned, so it is actually one roadmap, or you have multiple detailed roadmaps from there, but one aligned roadmap. And change agility. As Topami said, that's one of the things. We could not just leave. We knew this is not the end. Our project is going to be only the beginning. There's going to be multiple phases of the implementation. So actually embedding the necessary roles, documentation, and agility in the business change was necessary. So we had to actually think through that and implement or have some roles in place to maintain the change going. Our initiative in numbers. So it took us 5 months just for this phase. We were impacting 382 employees, including in both organizations. We worked with 42 subject matter experts, and overall we had 12 process streams that was within our scope. We had 64 hours of workshops, but we of course also had this individual conversations and interviews behind the scenes, and we had about, so I counted about 416 hours. It resulted in 216 system change requirements, and we overall looked and designed 168 process steps. Just to give you a little bit of an impact or magnitude of the change. I keep forgetting where to do that. Our key challenges, agreeing on the common ways of doing things. So even though we spoke the same language, there was no one way of how this organization did the thing. So of course, if you worked, again, in the same place for 10 years, there's certain ways of how you liked to do things. And remember, this were people that did not work in the same office. It's not part of the same team. They probably just saw each other for the first time. So running a workshop right in the beginning was quite a challenge. So it was all kind of, who's more powerful now, or who will be the boss, or should I say something that I shouldn't, and so on and so forth. And just in a couple of slides, I'll talk about cultural differences there as well. So we did invite some of the change management folks as well to do some ice-breaking exercise. As silly as that, right? Like we went back to the kindergarten, but no matter what, it actually was very, very, very good, and it was very useful. So it brought some of the barriers that we didn't need to have. 2, once again, we speak the same language, but OMG, the acronyms. Every single organization, there is no shortage of acronyms. Now take 2 organizations. BOL, in one company, and as we probably most of us know, it's bill of lading. And another was Bolton. It's a geographical location. And if you read in the same document, try to understand what it's coming from. So we ended up with almost 5 pages of acronyms and just what do they actually mean. We did need to agree on them, and we also need to rename some of them. But it's something that, again, is a second language to a lot of people. So if you're using an abbreviation, and now you have to change the geographical location, which doesn't mean anything right now, was a challenge. Next challenge. No or completely little documentation. We worked with this organization. One of the reasons we were invited to support this merger, because we worked with this organization in the past as well. It was one of them. We had some information on it. But honestly, it's so much easier to start your projects when you already have something. So they have some training material, outdated, but most of the knowledge was in people's heads. And it takes a lot of time, of course, as you know, to recreate where we're starting from. Another challenge, the role conversation. It did not happen yet. So what I mean by role conversation, once again, if you have 2 managers, that's probably good candidates to take this new team further, and they're sitting in the same room, and you have not addressed that core question yet, do I still have the same position? It's very difficult. Even though, so yes, we do to-be design sessions, highly recommend, and we always do with the middle management, so that they actually the vision, and there's absolute intent to make it a successful endeavor, so that you all know where you're going to. So it's one objective, and they're very motivated to make it successful. But never mind, once again, if your social question is not answered yet, it's very hard to be creative going forward. So, but it was not up to us. It was still in the works. We did inform the role mapping, role to position mapping, but we couldn't do anything, and we could not rush it either. And the last thing here is availability of key people. Of course, once again, merger is a merger. Everybody's spread very, very thin. So you had to go through, we use the same people in the same different workshops, right? So, but one of the key learnings was if you don't have the key people, I'd rather wait. Because it happens, then you'll have to go back, ask that individual some key questions, and then the whole rethink might need to happen. So that was absolutely a challenge. Oh, one more. Some details were missed. Yes, absolutely. No matter how detailed you go through all of the conversations, and you think that you went through every single step and all of the questions were answered. When it was rolled out, no doubt. There were questions that did not answer. We didn't even think that it might be potentially an issue. So I'm going to take you through a few steps. It's 5 main steps that I wanted to bring to your attention, and main learnings that we went through. So if you're ever in this position, definitely watch out for those, and I'll tell you some lessons learned on each. So the first one is cultural drivers. I found this nice picture, which I've never seen before. I've never seen myself. It's apparently very true. Have you ever seen that it's a Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean where it meets? Is that actually true? Yeah? So it's 2 oceans where they meet. It's actually showing you different colors. Still water. Same as my 2 teams. We all people. We all want happiness. We all want prosperity and security. But we come from different cultures. And it absolutely presents its interesting challenges. So I structured this just for you to understand a little bit in terms of what difficulty it actually came with. My company A was with encouraging independent decision-making by employees and sharing information very openly and broadly. They're very candid with each other. And if they're saying, if you're stupid, it's stupid. If it's a stupid idea, they will be very blunt with each other. And keep only our highly effective people. We had no tolerance for people that just did not perform. And here's my other company. Centralized decision-making, information is sharing based on hierarchy and is constrained within each business unit, very formal and reserved, and risk-averse, with numerous rules and regulations to really avoid mistakes. So when you're preparing and working on a design, and you have a process step, and somebody says, hey, what if not only we're going to merge and think about how it can work for both organizations, but we also improve it, and we can be a little bit more innovative. And this is coming from this company. And this company says, what? I don't think so. Or maybe, but let's check with X. And by the way, our systems will not be letting us do that. And we definitely think there's something in regulations that will not permit us to continue with that idea. So very, very different perspective. And what is very interesting is not only for that particular meeting in the workshop, how do we get forward, but it's also what does it mean for the future design? Because if you're very risk-averse, it's one thing. You will probably do multiple loops of approvals and validations, extra screens of fields that will not let you go forward and so on, whereas the other one is going to say, that's okay. The risk is not too high if we proceed. We don't need to spend an extra time on additional controls just to check that we are so precise. And this is 2 very different philosophies. So the strategic firm I mentioned to you before, they had to figure it out. Not them had to figure out, they had to facilitate conversation with leadership team to see, what do you want your company to look like? How do you want it to operate? Are you okay if your subordinates are talking about you in front of you? Do you want them to speak up during meetings? Is that okay? Is that okay if the work is done remote? Or do you have to be in the office? What is the vision? What are you building? And when it's one organization and slowly moving, I understand. You're kind of, naturally going towards one way or the other. But when you merge, it's actually an excellent push for you to rethink it. And once again, architects will influence that discussion, but it's really not us. We will take it in, we'll understand it, we will describe what it would mean and the objectives for the design that we would carry on. Next one, we're starting 12:11. So next step that we wanted to go through, it's identifying common business process architecture. Wow, that was an interesting task on its own. We have an ocean of things. All work is done in process, right? Can we agree on that? I'm a process girl again, so I will push you towards the process is a bone. But when you have all this work described somewhere, it's very hard to make sense of it all. What is my scope? Where do I start? Where do I end? Famous order-to-cash. Most of you probably know order-to-cash process, end-to-end process. Please say yes, some of you know order-to-cash? Okay, imagine, no one you knows what order-to-cash is. So imagine you have multiple processes, and some of them are really end-to-end processes, we call them. So if you think of a task going through all the processes, will go from the beginning to the end. Now, both of these companies had this order-to-cash process, but where does the order start? Is that when it's projected order? Or is it when it actually was placed order? In the middle, you have to deliver, store and deliver product. Is that a part of my scope? Supply chain. Order to cash. Is my supply chain part of it? Well, it's completely different end-to-end process. Where does it end? Order to cash. Does it actually end when we get money? Or when the discount is applied at the end of the year? You know what I mean? It's not easy. And that's where all of those exceptions of the rules actually drop. That's where frustration is called at the end of the day. And yes, it's a lot of detailed work, but man, it pays off. Because we actually had the conversation. And I'm okay if we say, no, it's not a part of this process, because I know that somewhere there's still going to be a piece that's responsible for it. But when we have and facilitate conversation, actually defining what's where is extremely important. So we took this, and we prepared something like this. These were our buckets that we knew that every single piece of work is accounted for. So good so far? Except, a lot of people looked at it and said, well, this is too complex. This you engineering something that is hard to read. And you saw the rolling of the eyes and saying, we're not engineers. How do you pretend for us to understand it? And we didn't have anything as sophisticated as Qualiware, unfortunately, to help us facilitate those conversations and actually do something much better. These companies were too cheap or not sophisticated or complicated enough. But we had to create, so we had to take this and do something like that, which was lovingly then called as a cake. Somebody would call me up and say, Sasha, could you please send me the cake? And I would say, yes, with pleasure. What did the cake do? It actually did wonders for us. We took this, and this is actually exactly the same as that, but it explained it on a 3D dimension, if you will. But once again, every single piece in here was a part in here. So what did I do? Let me help you understand it. If I could work this clicker. All right, so imagine this is the company, and I have the business operations in here. This is my day-to-day operations. And then people would ask, okay, but where's the strategy, right? So where's the planning? Where all that stuff? Well, I'm saying, well, it's an original strategy, or is it overall corporate strategy? Because there are two other layers. So, oh, cool, all right. So now we have 2 layers. I have 2 layers there. And it's similar with the support services. Who is hiring? Who's doing IT support? Where's all this? Where's that support to the daily operations? Well, they're underneath. So it was easier to understand. I couldn't pack everything into one. So here's an example of my business operations. This is very generic, I understand, apologize for that. But I have 3 main buckets of work. I have production, I have sales, I have services. And in production, I have forecast, production, I have planning, production, I have storing and movement, supply chain in here. I have sales, and in sales, I'm planning the sales, I have to design the stores where it's going to be sold, and I also deliver order, and I actually get the payment. And the service. All right, everything to do with the consumer and the customer. So I have developed marketing plan, I'm responding and working with the consumer, and I'm communicating when I'm doing your marketing. Do you know what this business is about now? Just by looking at this slide? Right? Not difficult to understand. Is it good enough for such smart people as us to do any engineering? No. But it was very good to communicate. And this deck actually found a lot of legs because it actually facilitated a lot of conversations. What are we talking about? We're talking about strategic planning. Oh, wait a second, then it's not here, it's over here, so let's talk about that. Well, if it's, again, it's supply chain, well, okay, so it lives in here. I'll open another couple of layers for you as well. So here's my corporate strategy on top. I formulate business strategy, I provide guidelines, provide marketing strategy, and I do research and development in here. So it helped just communicate. Our main lesson is here once again, even though my designer view looks complex to a lot of people, we had to communicate it and find better ways of how to communicate what we're trying to achieve. Not only trying to achieve, but what my architecture is all about. My third step that I wanted to describe is facilitating design details and processes. So we use process flows, my favorite tool of all times, to really describe what the work is. Step by step, one after the other, done in Visio, very easy. My main lesson learned was there, since again, we need to pass this work and leave it after us. We used as minimum number of shapes as possible. We know we would have loved to use off to 280 or whatever it is, BPMN notations, for those of you who do modeling work, but it was definitely overkill. So we just managed and we just used similar, just those shapes, because it was too difficult again. If you see that the conversation is not flowing, you're not getting the feedback, definitely too much, too difficult to understand, and it's definitely not the purpose of the conversation. And we did not want to go to PowerPoint on every single presentation workshop that we wanted to do. Would have been too difficult as well. There are a lot of softwares that I know are hiding some of the stencils so that you don't show it, and it makes it much easier for the user to see and the ability to read it. And a big lesson learned, to actually keep definition of terms. It's one of those, forecasts and calculations. In one company it was done one way, in the other company it was done the other way. So not only had to record what it actually meant, but there was needed an actual agreement on what calculation is what. So there's a lot of, again, alignment that was happening in between. Step number 4 was to identify functional requirements. So it was awesome that both companies used the same ERP. It was great. But processes that were defined, products that both companies had, roles that were assigned even as a authority and accountability for each were different. So we had to understand what are the requirements for the system changes are. And those are 219 that we actually had and we defined. So this is an example, just a very quick and easy. So if you, in the process step, everything again connects to the process step. In the process step of review account status, let's say key customers that you have, you need to understand if they paid, overpaid, what's the aging balances, and so on. We'll understand what are the detailed activities within it. We need to identify late payments and notify the role associated with the customer so they can actually proceed and talk to the customer. What does it mean for the system? Well, probably dashboard would be awesome to have. So we would need to build somebody dashboard. We stayed just on that level of detail because then later on, what are the rules for the dashboard? Who would see that dashboard? What does it mean, aging balances? How many days is that? So there's so much further requirements. How does the screen look like in terms of how many fields is in the dashboard? Tons more. But this is where now was a very proper handoff and alignment between our IT counterparts and the process counterparts. So it was very good handshake. And we went through all steps, one by one. Very detailed work, but definitely paid off. Assisting in preparation of training. I want to do a quick exercise. For that exercise, can you please just grab one piece of paper? And please share with each other if you have it. It's going to be very easy, I promise. Just from here. You will not be able to use it after that. So don't take the one where you have notes. Does anybody need a page? Who does not have a page? Do you guys want it? It's going to be easy and fun, I promise. And there's no here. Would you like one? You got it? You got it? Who does not have a blank piece of paper? All good? Awesome. All right. So here's a quick exercise. Does everybody know what's procedure? What is procedure? It's a description of the tasks that you should be doing or following if you want to achieve a certain result, okay? It's similar, think of it as a training manual, okay? So I'm going to read you a procedure, which it consists of only, I think, 7 steps. Don't worry, you cannot go wrong. But I would ask you not to look at your neighbors, just for the sake of this exercise. Promise you, it's going to be easy. Some of you look scared. All right, fold the paper in half. Easy enough? Sorry? Okay, fold the paper in half. Step number 1. Okay, good. Tear off the top right corner of the folded paper. Top right corner. Tear it off. Tear it off. Tear, just like that. Top right corner. Good. Fold your paper in half again. Good, you can follow instructions. Tear off the left corner, left top corner of the page. Left top. Good. Fold in half again. Now we have to use some muscles. Tear off the bottom right corner. Bottom right corner. Fold it in half again. Somebody's using teeth. Okay, tear off the bottom left corner of the paper. But I know it's hard. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Awesome, you did it. All right, we're good. Unfold the paper. Unfold your paper. Can you please show it to me? Take a look at each other. Take a look at it. Turn around, guys. Take a look. Did I read one instruction to all of you? There was one instruction. You followed one instruction altogether, but you got a different result. Could I have provided you with more detail between this? Yes. And I bet I always could. So if you fold it, you probably turn it around, which way it was, right? What did it be? Was it supposed to be just a bigger tear or smaller? Tons. There's going to be, no matter how much or how detailed the instruction will be, there will always be a white space between black letters. So our learning here was, number 1, you have to know how the end result should look like. If you know the end result, it will guide you towards consistent, similar result every single time. 2, the intent. Intent we were talking about before. If you understand the intent of why this thing's supposed to be, you will go towards the same, and you will know it will guide your decisions. Because quite a bit of times, you will have to make your own decisions, of course, and that's where we're talking about innovation and autonomy. Within my space, I can make changes as many as I want. I can pick the color of the folder I'm using. I can save the files the way I want to if it's on my local drive, until it becomes critical. If it's critical to the organization, if it's critical to my end result, it has to be spelled out. And more people we invited to the design sessions, more that intent stick into their heads. More there was a shared understanding and shared meaning what we wanted to achieve, so that we get the same snowflake at the end of the day. So in terms of the preparation and training and so on, tons of information came from where we were, from the design that we could, because now we knew actual swim lanes, every single role, what were the process steps that they were responsible for. Workload. On every single design, we said, okay, will more products now mean that will be impacting your workload? Do we need a second individual? Or will it be actually additional system changes that will impact, and the workload is not going to change as much? And then, of course, mindset. How is that going to change? Is it more customer intimate, or are we going to the operational? So what do I need to think about? Is it quality? Is it speed? Does the mindset need to change? All right, next, KPIs. We all talk about KPIs, but how much and how often do we actually measure? We can't improve what we don't measure. And one of the things that we had to ensure that we do take into consideration, of course, it's not only about efficiency and it's not only about effectiveness. It's about quality as well. And there are sometimes very contradictory KPIs that we had to actually have a discussion. And once again, it's actually informed even performance evaluation for the individual. So what are you going to be measured on going forward? Oh, sorry, in the business agility. So the business agility was one of part of it. What I mean by business agility, it's a speed to actually implement the changes, not only throughout your department, but it's also overall throughout the organization. And leaving with something, right? So we had to actually pass it to the next changes. So we had amazing champion in here. It's a quality management program that was behind a lot of it, and they actually hosted and they enforced the governance around the business change. So they implemented the process stewards, and we had a process leaders that actually were meeting on the ongoing basis to understand what is the impact of a proposed design that they wanted to do. So after we were done with the design, I want to show you this slide because I think it's very, very, very important to understand. When you have a design, we have a work structure, and we had people, even though they were from different organizations, right, in the beginning. It will result in a certain action, and that action is a process step. So you take the inputs, you do the action with it, and you provide the output. There will be variation. There will be always differences. Good, bad, we don't know yet. There are certain things, why things happen the way they happen, which would result in if you monitor it properly, either through the exception reporting, or it could be just by monitoring of actual work, or through even just the monitoring those dashboards. If you see that it's actually historical and it's repeating, two things need to happen that we keep forgetting. One, design could not have been wrong. We saw that, hey, what if we do that? Actually, it does not work. And you don't know until you try, right? You go back to the drawing board, you redo the structure, and it flows again through it, and now maybe it works. But the second one, which is very, very important as well, it's the cultural issues. You might have gotten this, or again, that snowflake, not because he didn't want to, not because he didn't understand the structure right, but it's because of the cultural components. You always did it this way. You always went to somebody else for additional approval. And that cultural behavioral thing that needed to be relooked once again. All right, in conclusion, here's our results. We had a successful rollout. We didn't have significant business interruptions. We did prevent majority of potential issues during implementation. Process documentation was used, and we were very happy to see that it was actually throughout all of the organizational structure changes. And our key talent stayed. Some of them really shifted because of some of the reorg changes. Some of them got promoted, but they're still there, which was absolutely awesome. Some of the key lessons learned, and this is my last slide. Don't kick me out yet. Last slide. Hard, detailed work pays off. Nobody knows the hours that we spend behind. Well, my client actually does, because we built for it. But tons of detailed work of going over and over things, so there's actual alignment, and you're going to the level of detail that that particular audience might not need, but later on somebody else will. So hard work is definitely pays off, and attention to detail. I think that's what we, as a consultants, as architects, are praised for, and that's what one of main of our tasks is. Following methodology pays off. If we're skipping a step, we'll be sorry later on. Now I know it very, very well. Documentation kept up to date, and we recognize really that it is a support of the continuous improvement. Every single project after that, or for now, and it's been now 6 months, they've been keeping it up to date, and it's definitely saving the time to start and during the project as well. If key people are not in the room, I mentioned that before, the work will have to be redone. Absolutely. We would rather wait, reschedule, and unfortunately it will be impact on the timeline, but otherwise it's double work than what you would have originally anticipated. And not everyone thinks systematically. So it's redoing PowerPoints, doing it just to ensuring that people understand what you're talking about was definitely a lesson learned. Our spend on therapy. is a good investment. Those are 400 hours. A lot of them were just really understanding what's behind it, right? You can understand in the workshops, there are some logical things, but just talk to me. What are you frustrated about? What's that? What else is going on? And some of it are very legitimate concerns. Some of them are, okay, I just want, I'm a lonely person, I want to talk to somebody. But some of them really, 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 really are serious concerns. All right, and giving in to we'll do it later again, not good. Do it now, do it right away. It's same as a shortcut. So moving forward with all the information that you have. All right, I'm here. Thank you very much for your attention. And thank you.